This is the Stingray Show, and week number 2 of college football is upon us as we have games this evening and then a full slate of games tomorrow. And what we're going to do on this edition of the Stingray Show is we're going to be doing something different as we're going to be joined by a group out of Las Vegas called VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, to talk all things betting and gambling with college football for the games this evening and for tomorrow, right here on this edition of the Stingray Show.
Hi, this is Tim Brando with a reminder. Those of you on Tide 100.9, look out. You're about to feel the buzz of Stingray.
And with that, I want to welcome you inside the Fried Bologna Friday here on the Stingray Show, as Heath Hopkins always says, and the Fun Friday edition of the Stingray Show. And Heath, we're going to start a little something new this week with sports betting. Now, me personally, I am not a gambling or sports betting person, have nothing against it. I just don't know that much about it. However, sports betting, and especially with college football, is a huge thing, and I thought the Stingray Show could take advantage of that with talking about some of the games this weekend and parlaying and betting.
Steven, surely there is nobody betting on games here in the Bible Belt of SEC country. I just don't believe it. Not once has that ever happened.
Why do you think there's Philadelphia, Mississippi, and Wind Creek Casino, man?
Not because of that's from all those carpetbaggers coming down here betting on the games. It has to be.
All right, so there are some games this evening and then a full slate of games tomorrow. So joining us from Las Vegas, Nevada is about to be Tim Murray, who is the host of VSiN Prime Time, which is a part of VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, which is a 24/7 broadcast network for syndicated exclusively to sports betting. Tim, how are things with you out there in Vegas? And tell us a little bit about your company, please.
Things are good. You know, it's not 115, so we're surviving here in the heat out in the desert. But yeah, VSiN 24/7 Sports Gambling Network. You can check us out on SiriusXM channel 158. We've got affiliates across the country, and then my program, as you mentioned, we do VSiN primetime at night from 7 to 11 Eastern. So what's that, 6 to 10 for the folks listening in Central Time. And then I have my own version of Game Day. If you're looking more of the gambling side of things, the VSiN College Football Tailgate Show every Saturday morning from 8 to 11 Central. And then we do 3 episodes a week talking college football on the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. So as you can hear from that, I'm very much into college football. So excited to chop it up after a very eventful SEC week 1.
Tim, last weekend, it's always a crazy weekend for opening weekend in college football. But with that, where was the action and who laughed all the way to the bank on that Florida State-Alabama game?
Well, the sports books were very happy about that.
They were.
We had a sportsbook director. I have one on every Saturday morning, and I play a little guessing game with him. His name's Chuck Esposito. He's the race and sportsbook director at a casino here in Vegas. And I said, it's going to be Alabama as the most lopsided ticket count. So for those kind of new to gambling, when people are betting, every sportsbook is going to keep tabs on where those bets are coming in, I should say. And the number one most lopsided ticket count, the public is all on one particular side. Now, at one book, for example, was Alabama. They thought Alabama would cruise. And obviously, as you and your listeners know, that did not happen. So that was a very good result for the sports books. And also, guys, sticking in the SEC, the public loved Texas last week. So there were 2 very good results last week for sports books. And I know we all are cheering for the sports books, right? You know, we want that pesky underdog, the sports book, to win. But they were victorious in two of the biggest games as Alabama loses to Florida State and Texas loses to Ohio State. I think from my understanding, LSU and Clemson, very well bet game. I don't think there was a big decision on that particular game, meaning that bettors were on both sides. You know, some were betting LSU, some were betting Clemson. So from my understanding and from what I gathered, it wasn't a massive victory for the book one way or the other. But if I had to guess, I would say that result was better for the book, LSU winning, because they were about a 4.5-point underdog to Clemson last Saturday night.
I do have a question about betting for you that I've never quite understood, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there that don't do it and don't understand it. How do you get so-and-so is favored by 5.5, 5.5, 6.5? Why don't you just do favored by 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever? Why do y'all have to do the 0.1%?
It's a great question, and there are times that it lands on 7. Look, this is all based off of power ratings.
Okay.
The sports books put out their line, and then what they deem sharp bettors will manipulate those lines. So if they think there's an edge to be had, they'll put in a bet. The market will move one particular way. But to answer your question, why do they put what's called the hook, that 0.5? Well, guess what? You can't have a game land on 0.5, right? So sometimes the game lands 7, the point spread was 6.5, and you don't have to, give that back. Now, there will be times, for example, a game that just came to mind, ACC game this week, Illinois and Duke, that right now is at 3. So if it does land 3, it's called a push. Everyone gets their money back. But yeah, we do land on those hooks more often than not, just so there isn't a draw. There isn't, as I said, a push out there. But no, it's a fair question. And why do they put the hook out there? Because at the end of the day, sports books aren't in the business of giving back their money, right? So if I'm putting my money over the counter and it's a 7.5 or 6.5 point spread, we know we're going to have a win or a loss. There's no chance of a push out there. But there are people who, for example, I'm sure we'll get into it, Mississippi State and Arizona State sitting at 6.5. I haven't bet the game yet because I want Mississippi State to get up to 7. So I, as the bettor, have a little bit of insurance. If that game does land 7 in Arizona State's favor, I get my money back at a push. So there is a waiting game depending on when you want to bet these things. But yeah, it's a fair question to ask when you see those 6.5, 5.5 point spreads and why it's just as simply 7 or 8 or whatever it may be.
So, Tim, we're up against our first break of the evening, and when we come back, we are going to dive exclusively into the matchups tonight and then get into the full slate tomorrow and get your take on who people should bet and who people should stay away from. That's on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Stingray Show. Be back in a flash.
Hey, Tim, real quick before we get going.
Yes, sir.
Is the Dallas Cowboys, are they betted the most of any NFL team?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think tonight sports books will be cheering for a Dallas outright win for sure.
Welcome back, SEC fans. You're listening to the Stingray Show. I'm Heath Hopkins. Along with me, of course, is Stingray. And tonight we have a very special guest out in the desert, Tim Murray. Tim, how is Las Vegas this evening?
Las Vegas is great. We're ready for football season. The summer's hot and boring at times, so we're ready for football season to ramp up. It's going to be incredible. Week 2 of the NFL, or week 1 of the NFL, and week 2 of college football.
My first question for you. Oh, what you got, Steven?
Briefly, I do want to ask you, with you living there in Vegas, talk about the hype with Dan Mullen coming back to coaching there at UNLV.
Yeah, and they got a big one on Saturday, taking on UCLA here in town, and a Power 5 team or Power 4 team coming to play at Allegiant Stadium is a great opportunity. I think there's a lot of excitement. Look, Barry Odom did a phenomenal job coming out here and really turning this program around, in just 2 quick years, getting to the Mountain West Championship game both years, And, obviously, I think there are some folks a little upset that he left for Purdue, but to get a guy like Dan Mullen, as you guys know, with the success that he had at Mississippi State, going to Florida, I'm fascinated to see how this year plays on. Idaho State was a very clunky performance to start the year, but then in week one, I thought we saw a little bit more from what we expected from them. So big test this weekend because UCLA certainly very unimpressive in their week one loss to Utah.
Yeah.
Tim, going back to last weekend before we dive into this week, I'm guessing out of the 16 SEC schools, the one game that the sports books didn't like was the Auburn-Baylor game. I'm just guessing on that one.
So I think there was some pretty good two-way action, and right before the game started, there was actually a little bit of Baylor money that came into the market. So, that was a game that I ultimately stayed away from a betting standpoint because I had a lot of people that I respect on both sides of that. And, to look big picture of Auburn, boy, that was an impressive performance because that's a Baylor team. And we'll find out more about Baylor this week when they play SMU. I actually like Baylor a little bit in that spot against SMU. But the fact that you saw the legs of Jackson Arnold and, Baylor it was like, pick your own poison, right, of what to do and to take away Cam Coleman and Singleton and hold them to 4 combined catches for, 30 yards. But Jackson Arnold was an absolute monster in that game. So, I think the sports books, if I had to guess, I don't know for sure, they were okay with it. Like I said, previously regarding the LSU and Clemson game, I think it was a okay result. I don't think it was anything crazy. I actually do think there was some backing for the Baylor Bears being a slight home dog there last Friday night.
So, Tim, as we get into week number 2, we've got 2 games tonight that you can bet on and then a full slate tomorrow. The first one tonight is James Madison versus Louisville, and the other one is Northern Illinois out of the MAC taking on Maryland. Give us your breakdown of both of those and which one you should take and which one you should stay away from.
Now, I'll say this. The beauty of college football is there are a plethora of games, and you don't have to bet them all. So, keep that in mind there. James Madison, Louisville, I think under the radar game. When you think about James Madison, a team that just a couple years ago when Kirk Cignetti was their coach was, emerged on the scene as a very strong FBS team. And we had that ridiculous rule, still do, where you couldn't go to a bowl game right away. I'm going to stay away from this game. We've seen a little bit of movement back and forth here with this one. Louisville about a 2-touchdown favorite in this one. I do like Jeff Brom's squad here a little bit this year. I think the ACC is going to be, especially after what we saw from Clemson and Florida State and Miami, I think the ACC is going to be more competitive than maybe we anticipated this year. And I'm a fan of Miller Moss. I think him coming in to be their quarterback there, this could be a really impressive team. So I'll stay away from it. I'm not a big laying the points type of guy. I like to bet more underdogs than not. But, that would be, if I had to pick it, if you're in a pick 'em pool, I guess I would take the points with James Madison. But, as we saw a little bit with like Mississippi State and Southern Miss last week, guys, Southern Miss was a very popular underdog and Mississippi State dominated that game. Even though they won by 17, post-game win expectancy was 100%. So that was a dominant performance in my eyes for Mississippi State. So I think there is starting to be a little bit of that divide between the P4 and the G5, in my opinion. And then the other game real quickly, Northern Illinois and Maryland. I'll just say this. I'm from Maryland, and, I got a chance to talk to Mike Loxley when they were out here for Big Ten Media Day, the head coach of the Terps. And I give him credit. He took a lot of accountability for last year's disastrous season. Yeah. And he said, he lost the locker room. It's one performance. I'm not going to take too much from it. But I was impressed from what I saw from the Terps in week 1, a 39-7 win over Florida Atlantic, a Florida Atlantic team that, with Zach Kitley headed down to Boca. There's a lot of intrigue regarding that team if they're going to capture what he did at Western Kentucky that one year with Bailey Zappi when he was their OC, or, the unique offenses we've seen at Texas Tech. So the player to watch on Friday night for Maryland is Malik Washington, a high 4-star recruit, a local kid, stayed at home, and was impressive in week number 1. So Terps massive favorite against Northern Illinois, a team, as we all recall, week 2 last year beat Notre Dame, but they lost a lot of talent from a year ago. They did bring in a unique play caller, a former Division II head coach, but I think it's going to take some time there. So I think the Terps roll in this one, but once again, not something I'm crazy to lay 16.5, 17 in this spot with Maryland.
Tim, with the SEC, is there any one fan base that you guys see a lot of action on?
I would say LSU.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've got a good friend down there. Shout out to my guy Jimmy Ott for ESPN Baton Rouge. He loves talking gambling lines. I go on his show a lot. He comes on my show a lot. Obviously, it's legal in the state of Louisiana to sports gamble. So if I had to guess, knowing that fan base, LSU probably would be the top of the leaderboard from a betting standpoint. But let's, as you mentioned already, Heath, let's not pretend like these other schools aren't firing away. But I would say the Bayou Bengal faithful probably number 1 on the betting charts if I had to guess.
Now you mentioned Mississippi State and Southern Miss game last weekend. I know on ESPN, I believe it was Reese Davis. That was his super dog pick of the day, was taking Southern Miss. When you see College Game Day pick a super dog, do you guys start seeing a lot of action on that shortly after?
Well, once again, just to kind of clarify, I'm not an odds maker, so I'm not taking the bets. I would say this: I don't think so. I don't know if Reese Davis and there's no knock on them picking a
Right.
upset special is going to sway one way or the other. Not to say that people won't pick it because of that, but yeah, I will say, just going back to that game, week 1 is so intriguing, right? Because the sports line, the betting lines are up for like 2+ months, and we talk ourselves into liking one side, not liking another. And I think the general consensus, I'm not saying overarching, person by person, but was, hey, this is believed to be the worst team in the conference, whether it's right or wrong. And I think we'll find out more on Saturday night, versus a team that, brings in a lot from the Sun Belt champion in Marshall. So there was just this belief that, okay, they're at home, they're going to be feisty. And as we know, it didn't end up that way. So, you got to be a little bit careful. Now, Toledo did get in the back door, got a late cover against Kentucky. That was another very popular kind of underdog play. Toledo going to Big Blue Nation last week. But yeah, I don't know if a particular sports personality sways an underdog pick. Not to say that there isn't people who do make it that way, but I would say as a bettor, you should probably have your mind set before College Game Day hits the airwaves on Saturday morning.
All right. So, Tim, let's talk about the full slate of games tomorrow. What are a couple of matchups that pique your interest that could be really good to bet on?
Look, I'll start with the SEC. I do really am fascinated by this Mississippi State-Arizona State game. Obviously, you got a little bit of revenge angle from last year, going out to Tempe, losing that game, being down 24 at the break. There's no Cam Scatterbo. He's not walking through that door. And, it's a different kind of feel, in my opinion, for Arizona State. And as a bettor, you sometimes got to find the times to jump on a team and when to jump off the team. And I'm more of a contrarian at heart. So when you think about Arizona State a year ago, no one was expecting them to do anything. They were picked to finish dead last in the Big 12. They go out, they win the conference. Sam Leavitt is the real deal. Jordan Tyson is a very, very talented wide receiver. But I think this is a very good spot for Mississippi State. You think back to last year, guys, they were a 6.5-point underdog at Arizona State. Now you're a 6.5-point underdog at home. And I did have to laugh. I don't know if you guys have talked about it. Did you see the videos of the student assistants doing their little cowbells? I'm like, oh, that's cute. You guys don't have any idea what is going on when you walk into Stark Vegas on Saturday night. So I'm fired up for that game. I like Mississippi State. I do want the 7, but I think ultimately I'll be on that. There you go. I mean, you look like you're preparing Arizona State for that cowbell right now.
I'm like, come on, man. This right here, that's not a real cowbell when it comes to Mississippi State. Come on.
So that's definitely one game I have my eyes on.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you another one real quickly. I had mentioned it prior. It's just top of mind. Look, there's an old saying that odds makers make ratings, not rankings, right? So if you look at the top 25 and you see that Illinois is ranked 11th, well, that has nothing to do with the perception of that team in the eyes of pro bettors. By the way, I am not a pro bettor. I'm a sports talk show host that bets, and then odds makers. And I think this game for Illinois, people are just blindly anticipating a top 12 team to go to Duke and roll. And I think that's the furthest thing from the truth. You bring in Mensa from Tulane. I mean, Duke spent some money, guys, in the portal this offseason. So you got a really good quarterback matchup with Luke Altmaier versus Mensa. The history of Duke winning big games against top 12 teams is not necessarily on their side. They did have that win back in 23 against Clemson when they were a top 10 team, but I think Duke beats Illinois on Saturday. So I like the Blue Devils in this spot.
Tim Murray is our guest here on the Stingray Show. Tim, you mentioned that Mississippi State-Arizona State game that's going to be played this weekend. And one thing that I saw the video that you were talking about of the GAs and everything out there ringing cowbells in the center's ear and up and down the sideline. They were piping in the noise as well. But did you happen to catch Sam Levitt's quotes after practice?
Ooh, no. Give me some
He
juice.
said, it reminded me a lot of high school football. It reminded me of high school ball. And I was like, you're an idiot. Why would you get ready to say that at an opposing SEC stadium? I like the confidence, but you are an idiot. So I kind of laughed at that. A couple of people have posted it. I saw it on Instagram this morning, but I remember just laughing. I was like, that's not any, you don't need to put bulletin board material at a visiting SEC road team that you never visited before. That's not smart.
No, I know. And look, it's college football. I know it's not SEC, but Gundy going against Dan Lanning and in a word of wars. I got to give a shout out to Brian Kelly. I thought he actually won the battle versus Dabo this week. Brian Kelly, as we know, tends to not win those battles and put his foot in his mouth more often than not. But I thought he did a very nice job this week pushing back on Dabo's 65, 58 grades or whatever he threw out there. So look, that's why we love this sport. And seeing stuff like this, people spouting off from the mouth. And I think, people and in your neck of the woods, it's college football all the time, which is what I love. Yes. But people are going to say, hey, it's not that great of a week. Okay, yeah, it's not as sexy as last week. I think there's really good games this week, man. I do. And yes, there are some FCS, FBS games, obviously, but I think Duke, Illinois, SMU, Baylor, Mississippi State, Arizona State, obviously Oklahoma taking on Michigan. This is a good card. It's not a great card, but I think we're going to have ourselves a fun Saturday for sure.
Tim, as we walk out the door, because I know you've got to go get on another show, give us a lock of the week as we walk out the door, please.
All right. I will say this, Stingray. You and I, this is the first time I've ever done your show. I do a radio show in Milwaukee, and the host always knows how to push my buttons because he knows I hate the word lock. I despise that word. I do not like the word lock. There's no such thing as a lock in sports betting. If there were, we would all be living on islands somewhere. So I'll give you games that I have bet. Okay. Duke +3 against Illinois. Mississippi State, I do like your dogs catching the points against Arizona State. And then if you're looking for late night action, the market has moved a little bit on this game, but I do like San Diego State. I was impressed by what I saw. It's a veteran defense. They are on the road, which is always tricky, but I think the Aztecs go into the Palouse late night and get the win over Washington State. I have bet those games. There's no such thing as a lock, but I'll still come back anytime. Just a little bit of a teaching moment there.
Well, Tim, the next time we have you back, we're going to ask you. We don't call them Texas A&M. We'll call them Texas 8-4. We can never get a pulse on A&M, and we want to get your take on it.
Yeah,
and hopefully,
I'm a big Notre Dame guy. You guys can't see it, but over my shoulder, that's actually a panoramic of Notre Dame Stadium. So it's a massive one for the Irish in week 3 when they take on Texas A&M. So yes, would love to be back, and we'll break down Gig'em versus the Irish in a big spot next weekend.
Let's do it.
Tim, I will never say lock.
Never say lock.
again. No,
He
I
knows how to
will
push
never
my
say
buttons
it
all the
again in
time,
your
Kim, so
presence,
I know.
okay? Thank you, man. Have a wonderful weekend out there in Vegas. Go Rebels. Hopefully you guys can beat UCLA. Catch up with you next week.
Appreciate it.
Take care, Tim.
All right, so Heath, we've got a couple of segments left here on the Stingray Show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that new little bit right there of betting, and we're going to bring that to you every single week because this is a huge thing in college football, and I thought we should take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's always kind of fun. I'm not going to put a nickel of my money
No.
on a game.
No.
I learned my lesson in fifth grade betting on games. John Elway and the Denver Broncos screwed me, and I got burnt enough on that one. So no, with all of that, the Broncos and the Redskins, that game. I think that happened in Pasadena of all places. But I'm not betting on these games. Be smart out there.
Yeah.
I always enjoy hearing what the spreads are and things like that, but at the same time, I'm not putting my hard-earned money up for it.